If you're watching this video, you're likely trying to become a better version of yourself. Most of the time, becoming a better version of yourself isn't about the things that you need to add into your routines and the things that you need to start doing. It is usually more of an elimination mindset and thinking about all the things you need to get rid of and stop doing in your life. We're going to go through the 5 biggest habits in life that will hold you back. And if you're struggling with any of them, we're going to go through the exact actionable steps that you can take to eliminate those habits. The first habit is hanging out with friends that aren't going to be in your life for the long term. The reason this is so critical is because of 2 major things. Firstly, the people that you spend time with takes up a large part of your life. And so if you're allocating your time to people who you know aren't going to be there for the long term, it just doesn't make any sense. Number 2 is we're very osmosis human beings. The people who we spend the most time with will be rubbing off on us, whether we like it or not. Whether it's their positive or negative qualities, they're going to be rubbing off on you if you spend enough time with them. So what I really suggest you do is write down a list of every single person in your life that you spend a significant amount of time with. This should be family members, could be your parents too, and then your closest friends that you spend the most time with. And then for each one of those 5 people, you need to write down the following 5 things. You need to write down the good qualities they have, the bad qualities they have, the values that they have, the direction that they're going in life, and lastly, if they're motivating you to become a better version of yourself. Now, if you can't answer any of these 5 questions for the people who you have written down on your list, then those people aren't that good of friends with to begin with, because you don't know them past a surface level context. So I don't really need to go too much more in depth into this, because after you do that exercise of writing down all of the people in your inner circle and then writing down those 5 things that we talked about, you're going to gain a lot of clarity around who are the people you should be having in your life, because we're all very intellectual human beings. We're very instinctual, and you know what's good for you if you have the answers right in front of you. The problem is that most people just don't ask the right questions. And so they're not getting the answers that can lead them to the decision that they're looking for. And so all I'm doing right now is asking you the questions that you may not be asking yourself, or that your inner circle might not be asking you, which they should be. But obviously what you're looking for with the people that you spend the most time with are people of really good values, really good morals, really good ethics, are headed in the direction that you're going for, maybe not even location based, but just head in the direction of their goals, personal development, financial mindset, all of those things. And then they obviously have to be motivating you in aspects of your life to become the best possible version of yourself. Habit number 2 is being distracted and not focused. For Gen Zs and the majority of people watching this video, it's never been easier to be distracted in life, especially with the evolution of technology and social media. Everything is crafted to be as distracting as possible. These social media companies spend millions of dollars on attention engineers. These attention engineers are actual jobs. They're people who worked at past casinos and are working at social media companies now for the sole purpose of keeping people on the social media platforms as long as possible. Their sole goal is to get you addicted to the platform. The second that you log on to social media, that you'll stay on there for as long as possible and be distracted. Or when you're doing work outside of social media, it's so addicting that you're thinking about social media, distracting yourself and not being focused on the sole task at hand. Now in 2024, I'm going to be talking a lot more about this specific topic of focus, because I think focus is one of the most valuable skill sets that you can have for your personal development, for your financial increases and hitting your goals, for really improving every aspect of your life. So on the topic of focus, I'm going to give you 2 examples in my life of being defocused, being distracted, and what it really leads to on the micro and macro level. So on the macro level, which is basically like the broad scale, very overarching. When I was running my business and started coming into money, started doing decent with our first business, then we started up our agency. So we were running our agency, and then we were also running our product-based business. This was back in 2018. So we were running both of them together. That in itself is very very distracted. I tried to convince myself that they were both in the same lane because they were both using social media as their main revenue generating activities, but two completely different businesses and would really need like two completely different CEOs running it to be able to run it effectively. And then we had lots of profits eventually once we were running the agency. So we started investing those profits into real estate, which is another completely different set of skills, completely different thing that we needed to have a new CEO for, completely different company. We had these three things, and then we invested into other businesses that we were kind of a part of. It wasn't really like a passive investment, which I don't think that there is such thing as passive investments. And so just before we knew it, we had all of these things that we were committed to and defocused, and we could have easily ignored all of the distractions and just focused on the one thing that was our main revenue generating activities, which at the time was social media with our agency. And we could have eliminated everything else, which we eventually did and came to the realization.
It was a slow progression.
So the faster that you can come to terms that focus and eliminating all distractions outside of the major things necessary will improve your life in so many drastic ways. Focus also comes back to the topic of finding your passion. And this is something that I definitely get asked in terms of how do you find your passion in business, where I've been able to work on this business, High Key Agency, a PR firm, for over 8 years now and work day in and day out, extremely motivated every single day. I think I'm very passionate about it. And it's like, how did I find that? And I truly believe how you find passion is being focused extremely on one thing. Because when you're focused on one thing, when you have no other distractions in the way, and you're focused on one thing, you can clearly see the things that you really like about something that you really don't like about something. And then you can make your decisions way more clearly. Habit number 3 is taking weekends off. Now, I'm not against taking days off. And as I've leveled up in business and are more of in a very creative role as the CEO, as a leader, I'm not actually doing any of the work now after being 8 years in business. And I have an entire team of 50 plus full-time workers that are doing the work. And I'm really just like leading and directing everybody and crafting the vision and crafting the mission for the entire team. I've needed a lot more creative brain power. And so because of that, I've needed to take more breaks. And it's not really about doing the work. It's about a lot of thinking and creative energy. But with this habit, I want to specifically talk about the mindset about weekends. So I'm not really talking about taking days off because I believe in taking days off and I believe in taking vacation, which I never did in the starting years. And it definitely led to some aspects of burnout. But the whole aspect of looking at weekends like an off every single week, because especially if you're starting up a business or even if you're working within a job, you're setting the expectation up for yourself that weekends are off time no matter what. And that's just not realistic. Even for people who are working 9 to 5 jobs, it's not realistic because we're living in a very digital world. The majority of the population is working remotely now. And so you're inevitably going to be pulled into work on weekends. You're setting your weekends up for failure when you expect that they're going to be off. And then on the occasional weekend, if you're a 9 to 5 worker that you need to work, or if you're an entrepreneur starting up a business, it's a mandatory that you're working. You're needing to outwork your competition, especially when you're getting started and you don't have the leverage of being able to hire people to do all the work for you and you're needing to do the work. The only way you can get ahead is by doing work on the weekends. And so if you just switch your mindset and switch your expectations around weekends to weekends are the exact same as the weekdays, then when you come on a weekend that has a lower work needed in your particular situation, whether you're a 9 to 5 worker, then you're actually gifted with those days off. Habit number 4 is being a yes man. And I'm an extreme culprit of this specific habit in the past. I think everybody has experienced this to a certain point in terms of having like FOMO, like fear of missing out, like you get invited to something on a weekend or you get invited to an event, you get invited to travel somewhere, invited to a wedding, invited to a friend gathering, and you just immediately want to say yes. Despite what you have going on, despite your obligations, responsibilities, despite if it's a weekday or weekend, you don't want to miss out on that opportunity. And so you just say yes to everything. And what you have to get into the mindset of is if you're saying yes to something, that means there's a lot of things in the background that you're saying no to. So especially around major decisions or decisions that I know are going to take up a lot of my time, I always think to myself, if I say yes to this, what are all all the things that I'm saying no to. And if I'm not okay with the things that I'm saying no to, then I'll say no to the thing that I was going to say yes to. A good example of this is when I was starting up my second business, an agency. I was invited down with my dad and my brother to basically go to the States for a family gathering. Internally, I wanted to say no to it because I knew how much work was on my plate. And I knew that if I did go on the trip, I wouldn't be present because I would just be stressed and anxious about all the work that needed to happen. And so I wouldn't actually be able to have that good of conversations anyways. And in reality, I probably should have stayed back and got the work done. Now, you can get in a trance about this and you could convince yourself that work always needs to get done and there's always work that's needed. But there's a difference between very urgent and priority work that would be detrimental to your business, especially at the beginning, compared to work just because you're addicted to working. And so you do need to draw that correlation. But this was a specific situation where it was very priority work and it was detrimental to our business. So I was extremely stressed about it. And what happened is we drove down to the States, and during that trip, I got appendicitis. And so we went from Canada to the States. I got appendicitis, had to go in for emergency surgery. And now I'm even more stressed. I ended up not being able to see family because I was in the hospital. I went an entire week without work during my busiest time of my entire life, and I didn't get the work done. I remember waking up after the surgery, and once I got back to reality, I was just dumbfounded. It was honestly to the point of laughable how much stress and anxiety I had running through my veins. And I remember when I got out of the hospital and we were driving back home after about a week and a half, I wrote down in my journal, because I was journaling every single day, and I wrote down, I'm like, this is the most stressed I've ever been in my entire life and will probably be the most stressed I ever will be. And since that point, it really taught me just to listen to myself, because you really do know best, and don't go against the way that you're feeling to please other people. Try and put yourself in situations where you clear off your biggest priorities so that you can actually be present and intentional when you're trying to spend time with people and saying yes to social activities. Habit number 5, and the last habit that you need to eliminate, is going partying and clubbing. This is another habit that I fell in the trap to big time. Now, the reason going partying and clubbing is so bad is because it holds you back in so many ways. And I'm gonna break it down. So number 1 is the amount of time it takes to go partying and clubbing. This kind of ties into taking weekends off, because you usually take weekends off to party and then recover from the partying. But if you really break down the amount of time that it takes to go partying and clubbing, it's ridiculous. You're spending maybe like an hour getting ready, you're driving to the party or club, and then you're consuming poison alcohol for maybe, who knows, sometimes it's like 5, 6, sometimes it's 7 hours if you're wild and going partying in like someplace like Miami. And then you get home, or you might be going to an after party, another 3 to 4 hours. And then the entire next day is a complete write-off. You're recovering from it. I don't care if you can bounce back from a hangover super easily or whatever it is, or how young you are and you're able to, hangovers or alcohol doesn't really affect you. It does affect you, and it messes up your sleep. You can't get into a REM cycle and you're destroying your sleep, whether you like it or not. And then it ruins your entire week because your sleep schedule is off. You weren't able to get ahead on the weekend, and then it ruins your entire week. The next reason why going partying and clubbing is especially bad is because the people you're hanging around with in a partying and clubbing environment are probably people you don't want to be with. They're probably lost. They probably don't have extreme ambitions, and their values probably don't align with the best version of yourself. I'm not an angel in all of this, and I fell hardcore into the trap of partying and clubbing all the way from an early age. Now, I went to my first club when I was 16 years old. The drinking age in Canada is 18. Well, where I'm from. And so it wasn't horrible, but I started clubbing when I was 16, and I kind of started going like at least once a month. And when I turned 18, I was going once every 2 weeks. And then I would go on some outlandish trips where like I would go to Mexico, for example, or Los Angeles, and go to the clubs there, go to huge parties. And it was wild. And everything that I'm speaking to about clubbing, with the time, the money that you're spending, and the people that you're hanging around with, with because you're clubbing and partying is coming from life experience. It's because of the things that I've done with partying, and I'm here to tell you the downsides of it. Now, sure, when I was partying and clubbing, like there were times, for example, in Tulum where we would go on like 5-day benders, and every single day we would go to a day club, then a dinner, then a nightclub, then an after party. So basically an entire day of partying, and we did that 5 days in a row. Literally drinking all day, waking up feeling like shit, drinking some Pedialyte to get the salt levels back up, and then getting hydrated so that you like can actually function, and then boom, right back to partying at like noon the next day. Ridiculous. That was quote unquote fun. Like, yeah, I was having a really good time while I was in it, but it's a great example of how short-term fun never is the answer, just like how short-term anything is never the answer. You want to be doing everything for the long-term best version of yourself. It's very similar to how I bought a Lamborghini Urus back in Canada when I was 20 years old, as soon as I started getting into money. And it was for that short-term pleasure instead of investing that money where it could have grown multiples in the future to set myself up for the long term. Now, I'm fine financially, like our business has done great since then, but it's definitely something that still sticks with me where it was just such a stupid ego play that I didn't need that car. Just like with the partying, like sure it was really fun for that 5-day bender that I had, like fun at the time, and like sure it created some memories which were it's pretty funny to look back on. But that 5 days made me have a horrible month because my sleep schedule was messed. I was recovering from the alcohol. I then had to travel. Just everything was completely off for practically the entire month afterwards. And so the short-term stuff never is the answer. Also, on that 5-day bender and all of the partying that I've done, with the money that you spend there, especially if you buy like a table at a club, you feel like shit afterwards. I don't care how much money that you have, especially if you have like very little money, it's a harder hit. But even if you have a ton of money, afterwards, you will feel like shit after spending that money because you think about the things that you could have spent it on. I much rather now spend that type of money on organic whole foods where I'm happy about the stuff that I'm putting inside my body. I'd rather spend it on a new computer, on new filming equipment, on more people joining the high key team. There's an infinite amount of things that would work towards the personal development I'm looking for and for long-term growth that would be way more beneficial than spending that money. Also, the people I was spending time with when I was going clubbing and partying were not people that were good to be around. Just their values weren't there. They were older than me and I treated them like mentors. And just through what I've been talking about in this, like there's an osmosis process that happens when you spend a lot of time with people. You know, the saying, the 5 people that you spend the most time with will make up who you are is so true. And if you're spending all your time with people that are going partying and clubbing and people who are lost in life, then you will feel the same way. These are the 5 habits that you need to work on eliminating as quickly as possible so that you can reach the next level. And this is an entire comprehensive list of things that you should stop doing, but these are 5 things that in my life, once I stopped doing them, cut them out completely, my life drastically improved. So if you like this video, subscribe down below, give this a like, comment if you want to see any future videos about any topics that you want me to talk about. My name is Luke Lentz. Peace.